Structure of the ears, spangled in the starlight, hyper-clear but non-belief. Structure of the ears, hyper-clear yet non-belief. Okay, so this video was about the relativity, not just its addition to this is the relativity theorem, and it's about a special difference. Now, it's also about, I didn't even read the theory of relativity. I didn't even know it came with a special relativity. See, there's a difference between what is especially true. If you deny the significance of having black pupils and whites of eyes as means alone to discern self-valued uses of, for example, of evidence regarding what caused slavery, it's individual grouped and parts all together. It is also hyper-evidentially recorded the other things, others and ourselves, how they were and are used remotely, blaming other things, others, ourselves, where and how, for example, nature shows us a breaching method caused slavery. Human fact keeping is a breaching method. Also hyper-evidential is where and how the countries where and how they should be proud to be black, for example, or white. Where that would mean one thing when the species is not named uses of our names individually grouped and together. Tactical ulterior from how we are individual grouped difference /s as the other species bodies and species body as a volume. It is a species body of individual bodies because the identity of one to affinity comes with two other identities of forever nature. Just like the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall /s of living bodies, plant and animal. They're also simultaneously dependent on the conjunction to the gases. And their mixture, no, as positive or negative, where and how the identity of hyperpositive, hyper-relativity, the hyper-metaphysic, its identity is not the other species, but they too have male-female. They too have a shared identity of simultaneous. So we could assign this to value even if you don't agree, you could understand. There's a science here. And if you're honest with the appreciation of it, it brings. Computers have to mimic this, by the way. The value of sequence truth before the order of the finite down. First of all, president / chief, and how our founders had to counter extort the other founders, and how they got and get away with through our own schools, blaming other things, others and ourselves. And that is used remotely. Everything is used remotely, not just what it caused, individually grouped together too. How? Don't forget how sick those crazy laws were. Witch trials, to an extent, we know that's made up. That was made up. The first witch trials placed right where we had where George Washington had to come to counter extort the people involved with slavery against everyone, including themselves. We see that they blamed our founders on that before our founders' parents were even born. The design of the suburbs was already with the breaching method. They never stopped against anyone, let alone Native Americans. It came through the identities of the other Europeans and Africans in collusion with a hyperarchetypal criminal enterprise method. First evidence of it is how countries individually grouped and together are recorded blaming and having blamed other things. While you're blaming other things, everyone. Then the breaching method, for example. That's one of the things it was constantly. While those things, per nature's demonstration. But nature demonstrates. Nature is 5 identities of relativity at once. That will stay positive to itself. Where and how an identity stays positive to itself. As in every identity stays relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. And to an extent more, we are a quality of diffusion. It has a distinct identity of relativity to itself in a physical body. It has a distinct identity of relativity to itself. We are constantly, even we don't live that long. It is a diffusion of its body. So how could all our cells, all the different parts of our body, even the minute parts of that, all have a semi-nature relationship to this. There's not just gases and the ground elements coming through the cells. There's identity. Now they've been using words like bullying, and I forgot to look up what the word is to describe words that sound alike. And nature shows us other. Nature shows us the rules of grammar and of the law. They were and are received by a greater nature of sophistication than they have been by modern countries, who also blamed on other things, others, and or on selves. And that's self-value, but people still doing it. The real cause of how sickly distinctly every single modern nation, their name, their individual bodies, individually grouped in together, all natural difference /s, involved with an identity theft, fraud method, slander method, involved with motivations pretending at locations, online, with the news planting predicate acts, faked evidences, as collusions with crime scenes, also with the retired and standing interbranch. The forgiveness is not to give up, but it's not to blame other people, leaving out the breaching method. Because don't forget that and how it was hyper sophistication here and there, where and how it came through identities, where they're being used to screen, the identities used remotely, countries fighting with themselves that were still the possession of sick laws, using remotely criminally foreign influence. And now that was truths that the breaching method also used for lies. Because it's the things, it was measuring and maintaining what it caused and kept, blamed on other things other than ourselves since semi-ancient times. The real reason we are individuals grouped in together, species bodies supposed to be trying to be together and trying to be independent. Unity. And independence. It comes with a contemplation. That is the scientific value of prayer, for example, and of algebraic consciousness / consciousness algebraic. And the other, simultaneously, where and how correlation comes also with hypercorrelation. And that demonstrates that there are three identities of relationship to itself that the identity of space/existence has, where it is not just as that juxtaposed with matter and coming through it and having been. But it is where it is hyperdition, how it is hyperditional to itself, how it is simultaneously five distinct identities of priority, individually grouped and together, the same way our bodies are, because its complete identity of relationship to itself is inseparable from every part of anything that could be or even made up. That means also this way has a group way. It's tied to it. Group way/S. And then all together. Finite grouped and all together. An individual could know these simultaneously. We have things that are simultaneously true. An individual could sense and discern the way the finite forsaken. Someone used to see the ancients knew, for example, is more probable and demonstrable. The ancients knew that when someone uses passions and emotions to speak about their own emotions or other people's, now we're speaking about the invisible but still discernible. And even if we're speaking about the extent of the hyper invisible but still discernible, nature itself, with science honest, shows the difference. There's a difference. It shows the value of our contemplation here. The ancients would say that Leaf of Hadith is being forced. A negative identity of relationship to itself, the hyper-native. That which we are in all. Our name's difference, we sense it instantly. It's a fact, human nature slavery against every single person distinctly. Through our schools, they blame slavery on our founders and measure roles and natures and needs to blame that on other things other than ourselves. Employments with that. Not saying to attack those people, counter that. Then you counter that and you defend that. You left out how those roles with that type pretending they're for justice while they were for the worse than slavery and witch trials. We know that slavery and worse than witch trials. It needs to counter that. It also needs to further that came with torture. Roles with torture originally and still. So our founders left us to explain how slavery was entrenched sickly, distinctly, North and South colonies, and still then states, and still when factory in nature, as predicate acts, delivery system, method, roles, blaming other things, others, and ourselves for that, or saying nothing. Where and how the only the only means to counter it is for an individual to defend the identity of the finite details and their value. What is actually recorded, hyper recorded, the value of that, and what is actually the value of that which is to come. So the breaching method designed the suburbs before the cities were designed, before our founders' parents were born. Tactically denatured to cause negative value nature progressions, acts in nature sustained. Where and how they employed more and more, as we know, criminal insidiousness natures of means to cause positive value nature progressions and acts in natures, but still only criminal insidiousness natures of them. It is also hyper evidentially recorded where and how people don't even have to be told this directly. You can see it in the arts. They have the arts even also. They'll show someone pretending passions and emotions. Or if slavery wasn't when they're trying to play different roles with logic, and this character is going to be the doctor of logic. This is the kid. They have the experts of the sciences individually grouped and together, tactically delusions wrought, while simultaneously tactically, criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality, aspects, and natures. Do not forget the significance of the fact, human nature, predicate acts, delivery system, method, roles. Who denies that Jim Crow laws were about a fact, human nature, predicate acts, delivery system, method? A fact, human nature, torture, and slavery method against our founders, let alone the people that hurt worse. Instead of having by its natural employments the colors, our syntax, therefore our functions. See, since we have entertained other things, others, and ourselves, using that to measure and maintain other things, others, and ourselves, blame that rather than the breaching method. Why and how? Not just then. While we have that defended now, that needs to value that having been. That needs to value what was entrenched and how it was entrenched. Having been blamed on other things, others, and or ourselves. Exactly ulterior from how our founders asked us to have that defended. The identities of each of the experts are a certain type of victim / hyper victim. In respondents and or non-respondents to where and to how having been assigned are the elements of correlation by what our founders really communicated to us. Instead used as tools, where and how used remotely. Now in the active are people that since before our founders that were born, all location / S, while all the sick things and pretending others simultaneously was going on. And motivations for that, because that's also leaving out the real motivations that, juxtaposed with all those other ones, don't forget. So when people pretend passions and emotions behind emotions, especially when they're speaking about other people's motivations, they're leaving out with more emotions about the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous. And that doesn't leave out the smallest finite detail. You pretend that one science is honest. Even especially this breaching method measured and designed the suburbs this way to be reliant upon any means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts in nature. No one wanted roles with slavery. It was a slavery method. It's complete possession of the human fact, human nature. It was the propagation of words other than everyone's history if you go back. In other words, it became criminally foreign influenced defenses of the sciences, convictions, opinions, fact, human nature, quality, aspect, nature. Therefore, names. Increasingly where and how they had to counter things like criminal foreign influences and like criminal insidiousness as natures, like wrongdoing with facts treatments. And they didn't know how to do it without blaming on other things other than themselves. And the breaching method figured out that it could get them to do that and then defend that. they could separate them from the ability to make proper finite detail treatments. Where and how, for example, even though criminal foreign influences would come in and out, it was not like it would be today. And this has never gotten better. This has only gotten worse. In our faces, our founders are blamed through our schools, and others pretended for the motivations. How they got away with this? They've been using fact cheaping nature tricks, fake motivations, planting with kids and adults at the same time from other classrooms. You're never going to catch this. And then with the uses of the exceptions, because this is manifest where and how they are being used remotely, because in the past they have roles of fact cheaping nature oriented predicate acts. Everyone. Where and how it is relevant, where that's what this is about. And or they sensed you and they exploited the relativity of, for example, on off each of the campuses, 9 campuses I went to. Kids, in other words, there's a recorded connections between kids that will tell you themselves. Sometimes it was themselves, sometimes it was the interbranch and the exceptions tied to them. Involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. In other words, they allow other people, they allow illusions of people having talked. In other words, people went skiing and stuff like that. Then they pretend you communicated with them before that. You knew the groups of people before you did. You were in places you never were. This breaching method employed roles with all sides on criminal and civil cases, and victims advocates, and people with the hallways of the courts. This is a use of locations that have puts federal evidence crime roles, criminally foreign influenced, worse than that which is juxtaposed, which are countries individually grouped and tied and together, suits and ties encounters, and exception natures in collusion with where and how exception nature and its conjunction to a special difference. And what is variable and what is constant is been and is being played, how it's gotten over with syntactically. For example, the relative to each of the sciences are abridged from each of the notes has individual grouped and together 2 other identities of simultaneous nature, one being sequence nature and one being that which has yet to get here, but we can bring it with where prayer is a scientific variable, where stream of consciousness, I believe that's one of the definitions that Wikipedia gave for Letha Hadid. It is most probable, it is more practical to theorize, let alone to convict, that Letha Hadid, this is not knocking Wikipedia. In other words, the Letha Hadid was defined by the ancients, was used by the ancients as a scientific variable / constant, which is, it will constantly, the rest of nature has no criminal foreign influences relative to its system to determine this and the value of that, which is, again, every subject individually grouped in together. That I bring up everything that is invisible or even the hyper invisible, because you could show the extent of the hyper invisible by listing the simultaneous. Now, the fact that computers can list And remember this, these have been used for evidence as planting. To a certain type of victim / hyper victim. All instances, recollections are being and having been employed. Where and how criminally foreign influence readings of statutes are manifest in our countries, individually grouped and together. So one of the ways I'm donating. One of the ways we can fix this, instead of having military exercises, we got on the same military exercise and blame a semi-ancient, hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. And or also recorded effective remote uses of the syntax nature of the names of modern countries, A through Z, recorded effectively, self-valued uses of themselves remotely, tactical ulterior from how they're supposed to be used as names of the species volume, where nature shows us syntactical hyperpossession. There's only one thing that could be our hyperpossession. There's only one identity that has us individual grouped in together. And those group differences also taught about by how the other species also have those group differences, male, female. The land down under has the same species. Now they're over here isolated. See, there are isolations in their unity. This breaching method forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded. Most probably. And this is our syntax. We'll blame this and see what can't. Because we're blaming. No, we have to. It's recorded in Russia and in America. The same enemy designed our suburbs before our founders were born. The same enemy knew that it could measure and maintain. It could measure, sense, and hurt who was going to be behind our founders, by who was going to do damage control, because that's all they could do. Our founders had to counter-extort really quickly only the people to force. There were crazy, crazy laws against everyone. And it was for a method to measure and maintain from abroad through everyone's own. Everyone hurting each other. Even when as unity. Separated from that quality of fact-keeping nature necessary to answer any question properly for the Republic. Let alone its body / IES. And differentially, because it won't. Its identity of relationship to itself, and that is what revealed the Republic, unabridged, but unabridged sequence syntax nature has yet been liberated before one could publish even online. That they have to have engagements with people who have to describe their roles with instances with them. The interbranch cannot be left out their roles. See, they've been coaching at locations. Now it's online, even easier to record. Wire crime max methods. They've been putting fake things in databases of police departments through time. I just remind vaccines. Please, people ask the television judges to get a response for Connecticut interbranch. Nature's names of all levels have been used also with federal, like former director of the FBI, various natures of proven federal criminals as his co-defendants and their family members, recorded roles through time with all sides of criminal and of civil cases, also with the interbranch names and their family members. Rolls with little tricks with facts, make fake exceptions, pretending to know people, and then with confessions with that, and then uses of it. In other words, right before Jennifer Socha and Jim Socha, they made a record with investigators of me being in the presence with them and Ray Reynolds. Ray Reynolds is also involved with people with the name Harris, involved with kids and adults, with medicines corruption through time, also with people that don't deal with the medicines, but it's also worse uses of databases. And it's semi on campuses, semi off campuses. And it's with criminal foreign influences. This is timed roles with overt criminal enterprises, timed uses of them at other locations, such as corners of streets. Fact cheaping nature, data reception, identity, therefore names reception, racketeering worse than war crimes is what the significance of how we have as evidence black pupils and whites of eyes, and that left out. How we have corrections, people involved with medicines racketeering. That has been worse than war crimes too, involved with the world wars. Worse roles than leaders telling people to kill each other. They're killing each other in war. Is what's countered as collusions, but that also used remotely. Forgiveness is not to blame other things, others, ourselves, leaving out the breaching method, for example. That means to discern finite details left out. That means to discern the order of the finite left out. That means to discern the value of what is actually progressively going to be valued. The breaching method knew that there would be New York City is designed only capable of causing negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that effectively used to measure and maintain who to sense through our own, who's not blaming other things, others, ourselves. That's increasingly self-valued by those speaking, where they speak of difference too. Or we have the right to a school. If there's a problem in a school, if people are pretending to be against bullying because they can't handle it or not. They can't handle the kids because they have the roles with juxtaposed differentially where no one wanted to be. That was exploited. That motivations was, the theater, the syntax, employed our opinions and convictions regarding emotions that can't defend themselves without self-value and criminally foreign influence, fact, true nature, quality aspects, nature, research, pretended value, all kinds of things, vaccines. We must be so the identity of this is the identity of relativity theorem. The theory. I mean, there is no need for the theory because nature itself is this theorem. It is that identity that is those three volumes, as one identity is volume. So we are not just those. We are just these temporary. It shows where and how we could see the identity of the hypersimultaneous for other ways too at the same time. This requires lists and or arrays such as with programming. See what we use is lists and arrays distinctly. Hyperprogramming. Things are brought before courts where and how they have quality of aspects of fact-treating nature. As criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, names treatments, timing treatments, location/S uses, and including with the news media. One of the ways they demonstrated they get away with this is for how all these countries share on-off campuses roles together. Since before everyone was born and right through our every campus we went to, including simultaneously the difference of that is overt criminal enterprises and private ones. The three branches of government, the exceptions not as them, but as them, like people with the corrections, on off the corrections, on off military, on off EMS, on off fire campuses, where they go home, where they communicate with people. We're in a value/value progression rat trap, where the right to lie is employed by a breaching method, criminally foreign influence. Right, the uses of exceptions that can't go back and be honest, increasingly valuing their having been, to the extent wherein how it is self-valued, even though it hurts themselves and everyone around them, other things, others, or selves are blamed for slavery. People pretend that people make conspiracy theories, wherein how recorded, employed, were denials of the existence of the breaching method, where if you list will simultaneously, even to the minimal extent we know about it, a breaching method was employed. See, that's obfuscated for how through our own, and further through their additional jobs identities. No, leaving and having left out how the breaching method forced each modern country sickly distinctly to partake with economics treatments, value treatments. See, value has relativity, positive and negative simultaneously, the same way identity does, because of the relativity of the value of its simultaneously, its sequence/simultaneous, different identity of relativity differential, or not different, but additional to our own, with our own. And where our own could be only 5 positive treatments. Okay, well, we agree about this to the past. You can't lie about what has really happened. A breaching method was sustained against Native Americans before our founders were born. Sustained against them, no. Had them took away the nature's hypernative system, took away nature's hypernative words through people that already had them taken away from themselves, through people apart with doing that. So that truth is being used by the people still who hadn't fallen, Native Americans, our founders, who had to counter-extort the other founders. Still, the fact-keeping nature. Slaves of the experts with passions and emotions pretending to be for them. Because everyone denies, worse than denies the significance. Everyone worse than called theory. Anyone who tried to cause, any individual who tried to use correlation nature. Right up front, what we could do when we were kids. I love my teachers. They try to make fake exceptions, and God knows what they put in the databases. They did this with the interbranch family members, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, in a whole bunch of different countries, time, uses of location / since everyone was a kid. They're not just that stupid. This is culture's course. Boxing. I teach us things below. The species body longs to shadow box, some rest, some dance. So listen, this is what we do. This is a movie script, because now each country has to explain to them, to their people, also grouped, and also neighbors, how we are grouped and how we are coupled. Always things are coupled too, paired. It comes with how exception and exception nature. are taught about by nature. But that requires its uses of things that appear to be exceptions that are really in demonstration of the same thing while being about exceptions. And everything is about a special difference. Where and how the identity of value progression is that everything can't help but be, even if we deny it. We have this hypernative value progression system that does not deny, in fact, it's the one demonstrating the only increasing value of of Native Americans. Native Americans are an additional identity to our names, having been, because they're still doing damage control better than us, not Native American, but American, per the Republic, per president slash chief. So American, we're semi free till we're on that species individual grouped and species its way that's positive onto itself too. Otherwise, lease of IDs, force space nature transfer is Earth's special difference forced from here, or not Earth's, ours, us as individuals, as negative value nature progression, where it wouldn't bring, would evolve backward unless we brought it ourselves backward. All exceptions in exception nature that appear to be in demonstration are not only with demonstrations of the same thing being left out. And the value of that and the significance of it. Relativity. This is relativity, having black pupils, whites of eyes. Here. These quotes are stole. Legion, hear your names. Betrayal tribes, exceptions. Each class, return the way we know. In other words, the suburbs were designed when before they had cars and tractors, and let alone cranes, bulldozers, and all of us at once, let alone the whole species at once, let alone the whole species at once being led by that, trying to be. It's right there to answer our questions, individually grouped and together. Also, hyper-evidential recorded is denied. How it has been denied. How nature, not only does it demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, natures, even if everyone agrees to entertain those crazy laws that colonization entertained in early states and colonies. We're now being and having been used remotely, criminally for and influenced while pretending other. This employed those natural differences, black and white. It employed the shock and awe through people where and how. In other words, the ancients and ancient human relations came before sciences became criminally foreign influenced. And regardless of the motivations of it, even though it was, now it's only known mixed relative to where and how sickly distinctly, regardless of success or non-success, as a name as modern countries with economic positions, everyone left out from the logic. And that's increasingly valuable because everyone's leaving out from the logic how sickly distinctly each country was forced to entertain. Not even living bodies, identities of industries and of jobs, therefore of names additionally, to where and how each name was employed tactical ulterior from nature's syntax, hyper-possession / possessions of us, inseparable from all things, box beings. So this is the there's also So the value of truth only increasing is because its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that is only increasing. 3 ways it is bound. But truth before the order of the finite now is also an identity of sequence nature, how a finite details can be used by any individual to discern, recorded overt / simultaneously insidious, criminally foreign influence, and tactically delusions wrought defenses of the names of the sciences. Also, how preemptively, actively, and only increasingly, as a certain type of victim, as the roles with those locations, with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the interbranch, and the difference of that, where and how it's being and having been applied by logic. The Constitution was employed by the founders of Bridge. When people are baking, they use words like Constitution, the Constitution of it. There are states of things. This is a science, not just to America, but this science requires appreciation of where a little piece of each identity. You can't even make it up. If you can make up a whole system, deny the hypernative one, it's going to demonstrate it. It's not just going to demonstrate overall negative value nature operation, acts of nature causes, and the breaching method one. Even if that's blamed on, it's going to also demonstrate group ones and finite ones. Also, not only was nature's identity there, denied, hypernature, so nature too, but also the breaching method there, its identity. This is how capable we are by correlation nature's means. One way redeems religion or betrayal tribes or exceptions noting, walking wise, all trade. This way, here all gain. Our nations can sit back and watch a movie where all the money is going to go to where we're going to. So we have them. Each modern nation was designed to need food and means from other locations. To have those negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures where they're already blamed on other things, others ourselves, to the use / S of that. It's not just that there's a breaching method. It's a breaching method / S. I taught best boxing. Species body longs the way full means. The species, the other species bodies too. We have to get food into the ground, probably liquid, right away. It's turning into desert, not just because it's turning into desert. The breaching method makes that there are proofs that it's more probable that a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise affected others through other motivations. As itself using everyone remotely to rolls knocking down a mountain, causing the Sahara Desert, the Arizona Desert, where and how it tactically denatured and designed the suburbs since before our founders were born. And I learned at Central Connecticut State University in a speech and a lecture that it was scary. Everyone was afraid to even mention. You had to be monitored and internations monitored. The ones roles with slavery, they had to monitor you if you wanted to speak, build infrastructure any bigger or different, or there were bad laws against you. People took part with slavery and pretended other where how they knew consciously. A breaching method was inseparable from every fact treatment nature individually grouped and together. You guys have been, you know, they're pretending people have made conspiracy theories. We cannot leave out the interbranch roles, differentially not wanting to be with everyone else, but increasingly self-valued roles with exceptions made for them. Fact, treatment, nature, data. Fact, treatment, nature, quality, aspect, nature, like sequence value. Like criminal insidiousness, positive treatments, negative treatments, time treatments, location uses too, because of exceptions treatments too. They're putting fake exceptions. There's a complete hypercommunications being and having been denied, therefore, free speech. Distinctly from. Also, but also from our regular communications. So to hide the proofs of this, they use methods of pretending because people don't use research that they're lying if they speak about what's actually recorded. They've been getting away with this because per how we can't leave out our three branches of government's roles with other branches of governments, all these different countries, timed how uses of them remotely by the people increasingly connected with tricks into databases. I don't know the extent of it, but it's increasing with Weathersfield campuses. There's a whole bunch of people tied to a Kevin Dillon, a Thomas Dillon, and to a Anna Dillon / Annie, and involved with name switching and forging with prosecutors and judges, involved with other natures of predicate action, child abuses, elderly abuses, VA, in all systems, where and how also recorded involved in this is timed uses of that through time. Timed uses of investigations, investigators, since founding. Roles with the World Trade Center used remotely at other locations. Certain type of victim / hyper victim, where and how employed. Our roles, needs, and natures. Therefore, names, blaming other things, others, ourselves, and with apparent motivations that are increasingly juxtaposed to keep screened not just the roles with these other countries, but with that breaching method there too. Suits and ties, I don't know who invented it. That would be physically, anything that's invisible but still discernible is not what's used by the identity of assessment over reasoning as ratiocination / pseudo-ratiocination. The breaching method knew while New York City was being built. In other words, the breaching method knew what each modern country, each colonial country, each semi-ancient country would be blaming other things, others, themselves. It could use them remotely. The same way it was showing them to use remotely the names over here. And in other words, whoever they would become as the founders here or there. In other words, before modern countries' founders were born, already through defense, other self-valued were uses of the identities of the sciences also individually grouped and together. Just like the people, names individually grouped together. Now, tactical terror from how nature wants us to be united and independent and or to debate. What they call debate is recorded simultaneously, overtly / insidiously, criminally foreign influence, factor, nature, quality aspects in nature, while delusions, tactically delusions raw, formally and non at the same time, and private, overt criminal enterprises at the same time. This is also relevant to where and to how what is actually recorded and proper to theaters and the arts takes on what was spoken in the past regarding movies with overt criminal enterprises as they were depicted to be on our campuses. See, we have the placement of police forms without badges, what they call the training of them, or whatever, on and off the campuses that is shared. As countries like Russia and America, they share roles with psychiatry and with medical databases and fire databases and the police forms at those locations. Judges tied to it formally and other on-off state judicial branch offices, on-off correction offices, on-off forensics locations and prisons involved with predicate acts with federal criminals since before they were caught, and against complete innocence, and keeping those federal criminals to hide from what they were doing before then and now, what they're being used for and since. A whole bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI and New Britain courts and Hartford courts. Before the World Trade Center attack, they've been influenced the roles of West Hartford locations, with Weathersfield interbranch also having been uses of locations for sequence shifts. Also uses of everyone around everyone, where they were and how they employ the right to lie, the right to time where people are going to be, to fabricate evidences as collusions at crime scenes, increasingly as every location has one. Again, by a breaching method that each modern country is the victim of, but non-distinctly. But rather than self-value that, modern countries increasingly self-value that not even discerned. And so where and how also not discerned, that's why they can't appreciate how distinctly we're forced to enter economic positions. And regardless of what people think about that, our founders told us to get the Constitution unabridged. That requires demonstration of that. It requires the things that aren't debatable to not be gotten away with being debated. How they get away with that is relative to how they have roles of fact, human nature, predicate acts with kids and adults. And with kids, middle-aged adults, and the elderly at the same time, where and how that is effectively being and having been employed to uses by correlation nature, tactical ulterior, then by correlation nature's hypercorrelative means. One way it redeems. It surges through all things, and as them, but while not, but long. Not even gas, not water, to all things. No. But it's hyperdimensional to itself. It's showing us Earth's special difference. Our own special difference comes with this distinctly, not distinctly and hyper simultaneously. It is gathered here. That side of it's not side, it's everywhere at once. But that aspect of that identity of volume as itself, the hyper simultaneous, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that, those three things as volume. How can an identity of relationship to itself be a volume? Because that's coupled with it's the increasing value of the other identities of simultaneous nature as its complete one, where it gives them priority unequally but equally. because that is each one gives that gain value to the other one. And more forever nature that is made is increasingly too great and too finite to fit with temporary / lasting space nature but one way. All exceptions in exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other are really in demonstration of the other thing, the same thing, likely survives. Therefore, as nature is being defined as an identity of relationship to positive and negative relativity simultaneously. The same reason why and how value does. So for the discernment of the hyper invisible, but still discernible to an extent as identity, as its parts and their differential and variable, constant / variable, but variable coupled with a special difference. But again, special difference now taken apart, we're supposed to ignore the finite details. The means to discern how experts are individually grouped in together. All location / S. Then further, everywhere there are database relationships. And further, everywhere there are databases, relationships, and sciences manifest. And that was sustained. So what really caused a whole bunch of negative value nature progressions academia was measuring, maintaining uses of all exception nature by fact sheet nature, by syntax nature. What is nature? Nature is an identity of relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. But nature also shows that there is a difference between positive as criminal insidiousness, natures of positives, and this is per nature system. Slavery enrolls with it as proofs that government it can't be implied correct, and they had roles with all kinds of collusions with the exceptions not as them but as them then and now, such as corruption. It's not just corruption pretending other. It's not just uses of that. Not just what it caused individually grouped together, because you're used to that too. This is what is behind how, where, and how people could get so long away with denying the hyper-evidential, the existence of it, the identity of relativity / hyper-relativity, and the special difference. A special relativity here or force from here, these of IDs, Earth's value. Species going extinct. That's going to be the positive value nature progressions to humanity. Look at the Earth, what surrounds it. You call that, you feel good about yourself because then you want to defend that syntactically. You can't afford the finite details. You cannot afford what's simultaneous to be used by logic correlations means. One way alone with teams, be trial tribes. Connecticut interbranch switched names. All levels of politicians recorded effective uses of roles with that array, where the breaching method, guides them through our own. Measure, maintain fake integrity of legal convictions, opinions, and theories. Tactically delusions wrought since founding / S. This has worse roles than fathomed with world wars through counters, with the Iraq war through the counters too, used to hide it. Criminally foreign influence uses the World Trade Center of their names, individually grouped together, people next to everyone. This is a game where everyone's leaving out the foreign, and it means, and what's actually recorded, getting away with pretending passion and emotions, but with the people increasingly, with next to the campuses too, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, timed and connected for them, and increasingly tied to sick things, not just the World Trade Center attack, those same names. And since it, then they tried to pretend other instances ever since. The courts, from roles with all kinds of methods, their systems used criminally foreign influence. Oh, I didn't realize. The names forgings, we can't leave out the interbranch. Not to convict people and put them in the same prisons recorded criminally foreign influence. Other names there too, tactically delusions raw. And with the time with their patients and criminals, including child offenders forced through time, other natures of organized crime, because the types of counters to types of things, to types of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, those locations are used remotely criminally foreign influence. And anyone who's going to pretend they pretend they make conspiracy theory. You have some sick people with psychiatry tied to interbranch who had replaced the words of our founders from Marbury Rivers' Matters for justice, for the appearances of justice. They kept it fake. They kept it fake integrity while it still rolls with that slavery torture method. They have to pretend mother more and more. They're digging their, because they use remotely marionette, peak sophistication, countries A through Z, and non-sophistication, exclusion, the difference of that. Don't forget, this employed our natural differences as communicated to us by nature about black, white, pupil, back pupils, peer. Reliefs, they calm, adjunctive, here, prepare. So syntactically, higher than war crimes. We're going to charge this and see what can. I'll chat. In other words, no one. We're gonna move on those things. We all well know this. These are not our means. Who denies that the suburbs are tactically denatured, and involved with slavery and torture before our founders were born, against everyone? If they deny that, the only way they could get away with it is by valuing. We were doing this, and this is author, so we don't want to hurt them. We want to give them both junk. Bad. So, in other words, vaccines to teach us things, prepare for soul. The course has long been other here than these, yet told, individually grouped and together. These uses of our names. We play no games, but we just agreed and locked down the economics. Put the human species body in the hospital. Take the criminally foreign influence uses of the hospital locations, especially for the interbranch cover-ups, because they're haven't been used remotely. But it is for worse uses of location /S that seem a part of other things. But it's where and how they are used remotely, shown needs to hide live progressions. So it needs to hurt anyone who used short words properly by ratiocination /pseudo ratiocinations means, by the difference between that. Reason, understanding, the mind uses difference additionally to the ways math does. /hyper additionally. Because those additional ways could also be criminal insidious since natures of positive ways. Or delusions raw. Or just mistaken. But if they're trying to use its system, but on time, on time, between on off campuses and at their homes. Each kid of New York City is sickly distinctly a victim of what I caught them doing on and off the homes of kids in cities and of suburbs, and the grouped communications where how they have each age of correlation ages, actual means, and the denial of it where it is relevant, parallel with where and how there are theater locations takes on communications. WFSB is in Rocky Hill, Connecticut, and they've been coached to attach me to fake conversations, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people, fake locations, fake communicate, fake ties to doctors, and as a kid. Now these people with a whole bunch of names that have been using Hartford Hospital as roles with predicate acts on my street, with people on all the campuses I went to, and then the timed uses of them. In other words, people I never saw on campuses, too, that they had to pretend other because they had a part of the attaching me and everyone around me and other people to fake locations, fake. In other words, sometimes the branches of government are criminally foreign influence with their perception put with what goes into the database is fake, verbally spoken, etc. Sometimes it's their sources, and the difference between that is also being in having been used criminally foreign influence. And there's timed roles with it with a whole bunch of other countries. And then they keep the people pretending you're against the other countries because their people are involved with it too. There are uses of their names and our names individually grouped together, tactical material from how nature shows us to speak for that. As nature's identity, hypernature not denied. If we listened to what is honestly truth with passion behind passions and emotions, fresh water would be dripping from every place. All exception nature in itself, with its identity relation to itself, will be thriving every place. Space means will come out of nowhere. Y'all want to play a theater identity names uses employed by the breaching method. You should fear. What do you think was? You think it was just it was just economic. It even employed that fake excuse. It employed other things, others ourselves, blamed for the breaching method. And worse, how you discern this is by speaking that truth. Denials of it and how they get away with it. Speak the truth. Nature shows us. We have black pupils, whites of eyes, a breaching method employed. Laws to do that through legal identities that were being used, haven't been used remotely, as black ones and as white ones, per themselves, distinctly per how nature, from nature. See, they made everything give additional meanings. They're forcing anything to keep an individual from defending the finite. And the uses of everyone fake fact sheet nature since you guys were little kids. Because of that method that knew that it would have all kinds of identities of law, that criminal insidious natures of positive negative treatments, names treatments already, reality treatments syntactically, can't defend themselves and afford. Short words and correlation actually capable of being, doesn't leave out the branches of government, the uses of the name, fake while it's still fake. It was fake. The people pretending passions and emotions other. That's not alone, proof. But when you see it with what they're denying when they jump into other people's business and decide things like that because they're sequence shifting. Their roles with that off into branch overtly slash insidiously simultaneously, rigidly and still used remotely. They're not apart from the overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Their kids and adults of their families are kept timed instances roles. A whole bunch of other countries on off the campuses pretending to be integrity together. This breaching method knew they would speak about integrity. It knew they would speak about the law, the nature of the law, and or the identity of the law. Fake and needing to self-value means to get away with it because they've been roles planting with others from off campuses, influencing also through on campuses motivations, truths used for lies, actual motivations juxtaposed with other ones, other names. It's not a phenomenon not natural, but as criminal insidiousness. While the shootings on the schools have been. The schools have been used to hide live progressions from other locations and preemptively. There were only 3 branches of government, easier than never stopped being used criminally for an influence, tactically delusions raw. They're going to make treat counters to things like wars. They're gonna speak about trade, world trade. You guys are shocked and awe, and your eyes are all forcing each other to stay that. And the breaching method, you leave the breaching method out. Breaching method replaced. Breaching method sensed and discerned. The voice of each age of correlation nature is actually inherent, active, and progressive means. You pretend competition existed. If one campus had been free, one campus had not been involved with identity theft, fraud, slander method, sequence shift planting, motivations planting, everyone would have been. Scientists share an identity, come surging in all things, vaccines. We have 5 identities of simultaneous nature as our fingers. And our fist as one. We have 2 hands of this. Because the same 5 identities of sequence nature also are bound 3 ways. They are distinctly, non-distinctly. That is distinctly, is non-distinctly, and is hyper simultaneously in demonstration to us. That is an identity of relativity to us. The identity of space/existence as the hyper simultaneous. It is the identity of relativity theorem. It is also the identity of hyperrelativity theorem. It also comes with the increasing value of the employment of our contemplation, of the hyper-employment of our contemplation, being and having been tactically replaced. Not just per plots, plotting instead of contemplating, not just per contemplating. In the hyper invisible term, the difference between that is also being and having been used, where there are complete syntactical possessions, where how they got away with pretending that there was free speech or debate, let alone debate. How they get away with this is how they have each age of campus involved with like a list of magic tricks a magician might use. They have little tricks they do each age because this is also use of vertical and horizontal confessions affected by the breaching method, affected by nature needing the breaching method to affect demonstrations of itself. But this can only be discerned where and how. we must list for the observation of it the uses of overt criminal enterprises, of private criminal enterprises, of the three branches of government, of the exceptions tied to them, and of insidiousness to the logic of people A through Z. And worse, with juxtaposed timed uses of it. And everyone's self-value rules with uses of the difference between people being strangers or not, or them knowing each other or not, too, because they're getting over on the simultaneous. They're getting over on what difference is capable of being used for. It is the force. It is that surging through all things, well, not as force, well, that. I'll speak of force, vaccines. It teaches not the course, that is all things. Well, not. Force is not. Whenever there's an opposite, and everything is about the simultaneous. A sequence nature is a distinct identity of simultaneous nature. The smallest finite part of yourself has a hyper identity of relativity inseparable from itself. Its identity of relationship to itself is inseparable from itself, and it's only increasing value. Those three things simultaneously. It is greater than and is small, simultaneously more finite than even the smallest part of each self. And it is therefore just like an oil, not more greater than and more finite than great Valvoline. Did I sing a song? I had a good lead. I did. I had another Valvoline song. I can't remember the lyrics because sometimes I thank you, people. This is how we could do it. If just one country believes and get one president to agree. We have to do it now, though. If someone get President Biden to agree as another nation, too, or as an American, and we'll just start here. And in other words, this is the same trap we're in. So individually grouped and together, we have a way to make hyper positives out of negatives. The breaching method employed. The only way to make positives out of negatives was if there were going to be collusions with criminal use /S of criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions raw. U/S of positives. And that too also use at the same location /S, but additional ways. All evidence reception, data reception, perception. Used tactically, criminally foreign influence, and simultaneously tactically delusions raw is what Jim Crow laws are about, let alone the rest of American history. There are positive surging. There are some ways things are, it has an identity of relationship that won't be a criminal insidious nature of positive and will only demonstrate it. But it also demonstrates its definition of criminally foreign influence and how to counter groupings like criminal enterprises and like criminal and insidiousness natures like wrongdoers or wrongdoing itself roles. Since breaching method knew from some ancient times that people will counter it wrong. Self-value defenses of that as fact-tripping nature styles, forced by nature, simultaneously juxtaposed with the identity of the breaching method. Because the breaching method knew that nature would demonstrate it to every age in grouped ages, and together the ages of correlation nature. And it effectively, however, employed that known to be left out as fact human nature, differential variable, and constant variable, and pretended other anyway. But this is also forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, because the honest voices try to communicate. Everyone agrees that no one wanted that sustained against the Native Americans. Everyone agrees that that's what designed the suburbs. And no one wanted that. Everyone who is pretending they want that have inherent active and progressive to their logic and or to their nature and to their names uses, self-valued roles with stacking predicate acts and databases, whether only as wrongdoing roles. So, because this sustained a whole bunch of wrongdoing roles until there's predicate acts roles. As that wrongdoing roles. A breaching method was using people remotely from abroad as people already used remotely from abroad themselves, through themselves. Because everyone is a simple fact, human nature possession of a hyperarchetypal syntactical identity, identity's value/value progression, torture/slavery method, and denial of it /denial of it method simultaneously at all locations /s. It's sustained that needs to pretend other. In other words, that's where it begins and stays. The breaching method never went away. We see it we discerned it against our founders. We honestly can't help but to use truth to lie. Pretend to be for us, but not be. That's what it is. Whether you're black or white, if you deny the significance of facts, fake sciences, speaking and having spoken for the suburbs, let alone for the cities, you're using criminally foreign influence, fact, nature, quality aspects of nature itself. Oh, I don't believe that. Oh, you're saying this is impersonal. That's what's recorded. WFSB is influenced to pretend it's personal after they attach people to fake conversations, including attaching little kids to fake locations, including with their role spreading lies and rumors through kids, pretending for legitimate lists of right to lie regarding how they have the appearance of, not just the appearance of non-justice, they have roles with predicate acts into branch with their worst patients and criminals and against total innocence and those patients and criminals themselves, people tied to the body dumping spots with unrelated killers and a serial killer, people next to the body dumping spots, the investigators, roles with training people that run prisons, treat people with the military, police forms, their family members. Justin Kovinskis is involved, I think it's a gooseberry or something like that, on off of Route 175 with Interbranch and Mark Violet, people with and his brother and family members, other people with that name from Yukon, have been planting sequence shifts, roles of predicate acts with the intelligence community next to everyone that are timed with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. Uses of them on off campus, uses of words like addiction, use of words like child abuse, through names at locations with types of counters to types of things that have the worst collusions with that per the worst uses of tactically juxtaposed distinct identities of organized crime and uses of those bodies, individually grouped in together, and the difference of them, recorded as the natures as identity are actually recorded. Criminal insidious natures of positive uses, negative uses, values uses, names, identity therefore names, timing uses, time treatment uses. You come into that job as a prosecutor, as a judge, as the person who works in the offices, in the hallways. You come into that after you already had blamed all the things others themselves and or had your nature, had that was identity that when it was already applied at other locations where roles are kept relative to the fact the magic tricks, the fact-keeping nature tricks into the database, the sequence shift posting, pretending passions and emotions is one of the things the interbranch family members do, and did, and the overt criminal enterprises, where and how they're attacking, where they use that to lie about what came first, and to write fake things and then descriptions of it down the road. Relevant, where also how remotely used are the individuals, the group differences, and their entire voice, each branch of government's location's names, and then recorded consciously, pretending it's personal. When we say that, using all exception nature, consciously, dishonestly while pretending other. So the news has roles with fact-keeping nature-oriented predicate acts with various natures of other nature child abusers when they've been forcing the child abusers' roles. These are also uses of Jewish Community Center people involved with judges and prosecutors. There's a Brian Silver, who's one of the names involved on off Connecticut District Court with various natures of federal criminals, and doctors involved with child offenders, attaching me to fake conversations with the Leahy family, also with judges speaking fake things into records, also with proven child offenders, and with people with gangs, and with doctors and with their family members, with names next to schools, involved with untimely deaths on and off the campus of Trinity College, and names timed uses of that on my street, also at road use of location /S, and the timed house /S, and the difference between the different family members because their uses of location /S, when there was an untimely death in the past tied to it. And it was also by the people involved with untimely death on Trinity College. They were also involved with the Robert Rodriguez, who's one of the ones involved with child offenders, leaders of the kids, since before they were caught. Also involved with WFSB investigators, Fox News investigators, and WTNH retired and standing. Also with names next to their locations, including the FBI in New Haven. These are people leading up to a 2006 district court case with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with his co-defendants, Thaddeus Grabowski, on and off Fox Connecticut News, roles with a whole bunch of people tied to Adam Domain and a Mike Domain and their family members and neighbors, and to Eric Mendez and his brother with switching names, roles also with the Wethersfield Police Department used to fabricate conversations and ties to kids and their family members since they were kids. And with people on the Britain Superior Court in the hallway of it involved with Eric Mendez and people tied to him since he was a kid, with the judges and prosecutors criminally foreign influenced, with the child offender principal, more digital abuses of the kids, with roles with it, with the women with the courts, women judges too, and people that work for the Britain Superior Court, or I mean, and Hartford courts that were planting evidences on on Elm Streets and Rocky Hill and in Wethersfield with the names intercities, also on off the state judicial branch offices, increasingly rolls with the names black/white, also as military police families and ones associated with working at telephone companies and medical families, like the name Spada is one of the ones involved with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids, and the difference of that with the police supposed to be against that. The Eastern States Narcotics Drug Task Force is also involved with the military police families, foreign and domestic, on and off Central Connecticut State University in Connecticut, who also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed as people next to Central Connecticut State University, rolls of ones from Wethersfield, also at spots next to Trinity College, also with the courts and with the police forms involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and child abuses on and off campuses, coordinated sequence shifts, natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting fake motivations because they have roles with foreign, and with that screening even worse, hyper foreign. So we're going to examine how fake sciences got away with so long pretending passions and emotions, when emotions are demonstrably to have defended the order of the finite denied, finite details, properly per its system law, and the simultaneous. So one of the things constantly that slavery was/is about is about screening, the breaching method, pretending that freedom came before it did. The breaching method knew whatever modern countries founders would come, anything pure behind it, it would be able to measure it. It would sense it through our own. The suburbs were designed as what cannot be entertained. In the short words, it means by the revelations alone of any individual trained to access this Constitution on a bridge and grounds hyper-additional identity/IAS, voicing with that and reliant upon that, and upon the distinction of how we are all hyper-native, and how hyper additionally to this, Native Americans value difference is being demonstrated to us by nature itself, affected by a breaching method still individually grouped in together, that only increasing value of ourselves even as non-Native Americans per the revelations that come by the decipher of what it means, president/chief. Oh, it's to respect the Native Americans against Native Americans, founders against founders. Founders had to counter extort the other founders, and then they had to pray to God to our founders, because they're individually grouped and together the other identities of countries and companies, overt criminal enterprises. Everyone's sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, is led by what now no one was aware of. All exceptions, exception, nature, and demonstration, the same thing. So little kids know that the suburbs, we can build way better than this, for better than free, and everyone wants it, let alone the cities. Space means come out of nowhere. Especially, too, we can do things to make temporary reliefs and temporary positive value nature progressions. that are going to only increasingly be valued. We can replace the means for people to keep their contemplation on things like war, while obligated to think about things like revolution. By and as what can't entertain. War's syntactical defenses. The war's legal bodies, syntactical defenses, identity names defenses, logic defenses. And I'll say at the same time, same thing with our regular civil and criminal law bodies, their state judicial branch offices, Connecticut. The conjunctions to it, like Wethersfield Pizza, is involved with a whole bunch of people with them, with wire crimes with Wethersfield Police, with people from Central Connecticut State University, involved with and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, a whole bunch of different criminal enterprises, and the countries involved with the World Trade Center attack. They forced collusions with themselves, and them sickly too. The difference between that two, effectively used remotely. Their roles with the World Trade Center attack names. Their roles with the child defender principle forced by the WFSB news predicate acts. Though they also made fake conversations with me and others about the World Trade Center. They lied about relative cases. It was proven after the World Trade Center attack. Post-dated documents had been presented to the Ninth Circuit in Manhattan, right next to the World Trade Center towers, from inside the court to make them appear late before the panel of judges. That was proven after the World Trade Center attack. That led up to a 2006 district court case with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with 3 of his co-defendants, and with their family members and neighbors, as ones involved now with wire crimes with Wethersfield Police, State Police, and people from forensics locations, and their sources also recorded increasingly roles with other natures of organized crime acts on my street through time. And these are roles with Sandy Hook and names like a Bob Chase, with various natures of forensics locations through time, recorded criminally foreign influence uses of the same child campus, and names tied to those same names I caught doing it, involved with predicate acts on my street with the Wethersfield Police, State Police, and foreign countries, and people that involved with home break-ins through time that have connections between them. And the difference, apparent non-convex connections too. That's also recorded uses of that. There's a Joshua Julian, also with the Facebook pages of the campuses and of the interbranch and of private, being and having been used criminally for an influence, tactically, delusions raw. And sometimes it was that Facebook people's roles with tricks with the changing syntax and making it up. And then sometimes it was the FBI themselves and other police forms involved with the uses of descriptions of instances and of locations and of timing relationships and of names relationships. They've been pretending passions and emotions into records to hide uses of themselves for predicate act methods, natures of contemplation, the natures of logic that are collusions also with the use /s of the differences between themselves and the other natures of overtly criminally foreign influence. Interstates, internationally, and grouped originally and still. They have suits and ties and the counters to it and their uses of exception nature. See their uses of how they prevent the people through their the religions. They have the first part of the Old Testament. It says all that someone needs to understand is right up to here, where the scientists share an identity. Regardless if people don't understand that or not, or they don't believe in that form of, caring about Jesus Christ or whatever it is, they call it. It's not the sciences that it's not the identity the science you share, as we're told right up front in the book. Same thing with the Quran. The Quran says someone's obligated, basically translation, they're obligated not to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason. All someone needs to do to be a Muslim is to agree and be honest about it, or don't agree. Do you believe that the identity of the hyper-simultaneous scientifically should be named Allah or not? Doesn't say the rest. And where criminal foreign influences and criminal insidiousness is a part of that conversation, the religions and the branches of government, the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, they share needs to self-value increasingly. Criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments, negative treatments with their logic, identity treatments, names treatments. 6 summaries and theories regarding history, regarding the present. So in other words, regarding what we could agree on, anyone wants to deny this about our suburbs, they're going to have inherent active and progressive to their fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature. That which is only gotten away with because of the relative use of location /s, where the breaching method employed states self-valued, criminally foreign influenced, and pretending other, tactically delusions wrought, pretending other, need to get away with it by self-valuing through other motivations, natures, needs, interests, which used remotely, also a hyper-additional way. So when we see people bringing up January 6th, do you see that? And these are the sides of a case. These are 2 sides. They're leaving out what's actually recorded. Correlation nature has the trinity. Correlation has the identity of relativity /hyperrelativity, inseparable from itself. We can make achievements that leave out the value of sequence as it actually unfolded. Leave out trying to figure out what's true always. What was it about the past? In other words, the only increasing value of that breaching method is demonstrated. Remote uses of Native Americans having had nature's means to cause positive value, nature, progressions, action, nature, been taken away from them slowly and more through people that already had this taken away with them. But syntactically, no one's dealing with equality of fact, human nature, allowing that to be demonstrated. All the courts were and are still employed. They're still self-valued, having been employed. Tactically, criminally foreign influence. Tactically, delusions wrought. Even if slavery was made up, regardless who made it up, what motivations. That slavery, that torture /slavery method was a possession of everyone through ourselves. This is going to sense what founder of any modern country is going to try to counter how it was using remotely self-defenses of self-value of syntactically of the human species volume /s being and having been used as names other than how as nature is demonstrating to us to use our name. It's our names /s. And it's increasingly demonstrating the presence of our hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise method and influence over motivations for in tactical delusions regarding the scale and nature of infrastructure and means and values allotments. We're in a trap. All I have to do is agree like that syntactically, the bottoms of the markets, everything's locked down to this extent. All of a sudden, we have these means of modern nations agreeing that they're going to admit how they're forced to need to lie about how they need and to hide, not speak about how they need food from other locations. Even the suburbs do, let alone the cities. We're in a semi-ancient trap. This is one of the proofs that the Native Americans, how they're in positions and their voices syntactically forced to entertain and or hurt what can't be defended in the voice of that which is hypernative, pure, before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. Ancients did not hunt and gather. Obviously, before criminal influences, this is good, cultivate, propagate this. This way, this can be done, and this pond can be made here. We can make this defensible for these types of things to this extent. Freshwater coral, whatever. And they can be feed and this they're going to be successful. The largemouth bass, they're going to take off this certain amount of the population, but they can't fit in here. And they're going to go with the frogs. They're going to be able to defend themselves. Not defend. In other words, the worms used to walk into water, even when it's not raining. They're like programmed to walk in the water, obviously, because nature tells us how to communicate about its identity in relation to itself, and the only increasing value of that. It's the one that causes positive or negative value nature progressions, acts of nature. It's the only one that answers how to counter things like criminal insidiousness proper. So I'm not even a lawyer. The ACE Act. This will be I'm not military either. This is superior than military syntax, law bodies. Obviously, that are fake integrity, have black pupils of the law. They want to use all exceptions except nature. For example, that and how people that will blindly sacrifice their lives physically and intellectually but not for nature's system. All exception nature. The breaching method, people show pay everyone to use that for truths, for lies, to get over on our own. So rather we have to debate things, it's not even debate. Rather, we could have been capitalizing on our agreements, stacking means. Huge nations with all these means, admitting to the other countries that could still have fruit, for example. There are proofs that they tactically denatured. There are proofs that the reason the asparagus is one of the only perennial vegetables is because they took all the vegetables away so they could force everyone onto the value nature system as names, individually grouped and together, tactically ulterior, as shown to by the breaching method. They already have the people doing that, having been used remotely that way. Not fathoming how how singular use, method singular easy, of entertainment of the sciences as identities, therefore names, individually grouped in together, tactical terror from nature's use of that. And how sequentially it appears we left out the value of our contemplation to it. We left out the value of understanding how words that had been revealed in ancient times, following nature's demonstrations, they became criminally foreign influence, uses of them. Then founding religions came. But already, the uses of all locations' names, individually grouped and together, was by a system of torture / slavery that was coupled with what was self-valued by everyone not realizing, because everyone didn't realize what motivates this singular breaching method is not money. It needs to keep blamed on other things, others, ourselves. What it caused originally and still. Because if it doesn't do that, the floodgates open. So in other words, please follow mandated law. Don't let them pretend it's personal. They won't go down to Connecticut to branch switches names and sequences while rolls fabricating police reports of arrays, switching officers' names, making confessions about that. So no one will go back and find the real. Now these are people with forensics locations through time, prisons, families, intelligence community, foreign countries, families, till. Professional till mixed. Use of corners of streets increasingly. Motivations, a whole bunch of things that are to keep used to keep people leaving out finite details, active or progressive. Used with naive questions asking. Criminally foreign influence uses of all investigators of their locations, including their homes. That's one of the things Jim Crow law is about, let alone American history. Yeah. Marbury versus Madison can be used with native dreams to break fake branches here and there, you see. The public calls you all to Legion. Hear its name again, and then proceed. And with exceptions. And not without exceptions, and with tribes. And to sense for nature, not for the breaching method. So, this way. Through this way alone, it then will rise. The trial tribes. All rise! Oh, thank you. Vaccines. I teach us things. Species by long strain. I play no game.